My name is Juanita Reyes. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of how I stood in a room full of laughter, humiliation swelling in my chest, and how I quietly ended it all with a single envelope. It all started in a way that seemed cute to anyone listening. Nathan and I met at an escape room event that went terribly wrong. The power went out, the elevator jammed, and we were stuck between floors for almost an hour. I was pacing, anxious, and praying my bladder wouldn't fail me. Nathan? He was cracking awkward jokes, trying to keep things light. I laughed. Not because he was funny, but because panic always made me laugh at the worst times. That night, we exchanged numbers. That led to dates, then to moving in together, and eventually, a modest wedding in his hometown in Oregon. I remember thinking, this is real. This is the man I'll build my life with. We weren't perfect, but we were a team, or so I thought. The cracks started to show the first time I met his family. At his mother Joanne's birthday party, I brought a bottle of wine I'd carefully selected. Madison, his older sister, glanced at the label and muttered, "City wine, huh? Hope it pairs well with your awkward silences." Everyone laughed, including Nathan. That should have been my first warning. But I chalked it up to nerves. I told myself they were just teasing. Trying to include me, maybe. But over time, their words got sharper. More direct. Always with a smile on their lips and cruelty in their eyes. Juanita's always watching her portions. Must be the city diet. Oh, she designs interiors? Good luck making our farmhouse-styled minimalist chic. She's too quiet. Probably judging us. And the worst part? Nathan never defended me. Not once. At best, he'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Don't let it get to you, babe." At worst, he joined in, just enough to make sure he kept his spot as the family's golden boy. I remember one Thanksgiving, I brought my grandmother's sweet potato casserole recipe. Madison took one bite and said, "What is this? Dessert with mashed potatoes? You trying to give us diabetes or just confuse us?" They laughed for 5 straight minutes. I smiled like I didn't care, but that night, I cried in the guest bedroom with the door locked. I tried everything, changing how I dressed, how I spoke, what I cooked, even what perfume I wore. Nothing was enough. Their eyes always scanned me like I was an exhibit in a zoo. And Nathan? He never said a word. I wasn't his partner in those moments. I was a prop. A fragile one at that. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I got closer to Emily, Nathan's cousin who was pregnant and genuinely kind, I might feel some safety. But the baby shower was the last straw. It was raining that day. Oregon's skies were heavy with gray clouds and the air was thick with the scent of wet pine. Nathan drove us to Aunt Clara's house. I stared out the window in silence while he hummed along to some classic rock song, completely unaware, or uncaring, of the storm brewing inside me. As soon as we walked in, I knew it would be bad. The eyes. The smirks. Madison was already holding court with her wine glass like she was hosting her own show. When she spotted me, her grin widened. "Oh look," she called out, loud enough to stop conversations around her. "Juanita's here. Did you bring kale cupcakes or another quinoa mystery today?" Laughter. Then Nathan, standing beside me with one hand on my back, added, "Don't tease her, y'all. If she starts cooking, we might finally lose weight." They roared. I froze. I remember everything in that moment, the click of a phone camera, the lemon-scented candle burning on the fireplace mantel, the sound of baby clothes being unwrapped across the room. My ears rang with the laughter. My chest hollowed out. I wanted to disappear. But I didn't. I smiled. I sat down. I nodded politely. And inside, something cracked open. Later, when Aunt Clara asked Nathan when we were having a baby, he said it, laughing. "With her? I'd rather stay childless." Can you imagine dealing with that energy every day? I didn't walk out right then because I was shocked. Not at the words, but at how normal it had all become. How this man who once looked into my eyes in an elevator and said, "You're kind of amazing," could now say such a thing in front of dozens of people. When I finally stood up and left the party, I didn't look back. Nathan grabbed my wrist and hissed at me not to make a scene. His mother muttered something about controlling your wife. I heard it. I registered it. But I was beyond pain. I was ice. I walked into the rain. Cold water plastered my hair to my cheeks, but I didn't care. It was the most real thing I'd felt in years. I drove straight to Claire's apartment, my best friend, my sister and everything but blood. She opened the door, saw my soaked clothes and shaking hands, and didn't ask a single question. Just wrapped me in a blanket and let me sit in silence. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I lay awake on her sofa staring at the ceiling and thinking one thought over and over. I will never be their punchline again. The morning after the baby shower, I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating non-stop on the coffee table beside Claire's couch. I blinked at the flood of notifications, 37 missed messages, 14 missed calls, and 3 voicemails, all in the span of a few hours. My stomach twisted. Most of the messages were from Nathan. Some were short and sharp. Where did you go? You embarrassed the entire family. Call me now. Then came the ones from his mother, Joanne. You need to control yourself, Juanita. We are a traditional family and you crossed the line. And of course, Madison's was the cruelest. Hope you enjoyed your performance last night, Queen of Drama. Maybe next time bring a mic. I opened the family group chat out of morbid curiosity. That was a mistake. Madison had already started sending memes. One was of a crying cartoon woman with the caption, "Juanita every time someone tells a joke." Another was a cat in a crown labeled "Queen of Overreaction." I stared at the screen, not blinking. My hand trembled with rage as I set the phone down. Claire came out of the kitchen holding a mug of coffee. Her expression was calm but observant, like she'd been waiting for the storm to hit me. "Let me guess," she said softly, "they're pretending you're the problem." I nodded. They think I owe them an apology. Claire sat beside me, placing the mug in front of me. "What are you going to do?" I looked down at my hands. "I don't know yet. But I'm done pretending it's all fine." By that evening, after ignoring every call and text, another message came through. This one was from Joanne. "Let's resolve this the right way. Family dinner at Olive Garden tomorrow. Everyone wants to fix this. Please don't make this worse." It was classic manipulation, public setting, full audience, their home court. They weren't inviting me to talk. They were staging a performance where I'd be the villain in their story and they'd play the peacemakers. I showed the message to Claire. "They're setting you up," she said immediately. "They want to control the narrative." I nodded. "I know. But I'm going." Claire blinked. "Are you sure?" I met her eyes. "They've turned me into a joke for years. I'm done being quiet. They want me to show up? I'll show up. But this time I'll speak." Claire's face broke into a slow smile. "Then I'm going with you." The next day, I wore the simplest, cleanest outfit I owned, a soft beige blouse, dark jeans, no makeup. I didn't want to look dramatic. I wanted to look calm. Like someone who had nothing left to prove. Claire picked me up. We didn't say much on the drive. I sat in silence, rehearsing my words. Not lines of revenge. Just truth. Every memory, every insult, every time Nathan let me burn to keep his image intact. We arrived at the restaurant a few minutes early. I saw them through the window of Nathan, Joanne, Madison, and a few of the usuals, his Aunt Nora, Cousin Emily, and of course, his dad looking as if nothing in the world could ever bother him. When we stepped inside, the air shifted. Their faces stiffened. Madison raised her brows as if to say, "Look who crawled out of the shadows." Nathan stood and reached toward me like he might hug me. I stepped back. "Let's just sit," I said quietly. Claire sat beside me like a silent guard. The server brought water and menus. The usual empty chatter started, weather, sales, gossip about someone's dog. I said nothing. I just waited. Then Joanne folded her hands and looked at me like she was my school principal. "Juanita," she began, her voice sugar-coated with concern, "everyone wants to move forward. Nobody meant to hurt you. We're family. Families tease. But I hope you understand, we only meant it with love." Nathan chimed in. "Yeah, babe. I mean, everyone here cares about you. Let's just stop the drama." Madison scoffed. "Seriously. Let's not turn a joke into a war." I picked up my phone, opened my notes app, and placed it on the table. "Before we pretend none of this happened, let me read you a few of your loving words," I said. The table went dead silent. "Juanita's food is for goats. Careful if she holds the baby, it might cry. She's so boring, even her outfits are beige. Nathan, how do you deal with that every day? You need to control your wife." Joanne opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm not finished. If Juanita has a kid, it'd probably be born depressed. She fixes houses but can't fix herself. With her? I'd rather stay childless." I looked around the table. "You said those things." "Not once. Not in private. In public. At family events. In front of children." "And Nathan?" He looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "You laughed every time. You never said stop. You never said that's my wife." "Not once." Joanne shifted in her seat. "I think maybe we all said things we regret." "No," I interrupted. "You regret that I walked out. You don't regret what you said. Because you've never stopped saying it." Nathan's face was pale now. "Juanita, can't we talk about this, just us?" I reached into my purse, pulled out the white envelope, and placed it in front of him. "This is your chance," I said, voice steady. "Divorce papers. Signed. Just needs yours." His eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I am. I've been serious for 3 years. You just never took me seriously." Madison's voice shot up, angry and sharp. "So you're just quitting? Running because you can't take a joke?" Claire finally spoke. Her voice was low, but every word cut like glass. "She's not quitting. She's protecting herself. Something none of you ever bothered to do." I stood. "Enjoy your dinner," I said. "And don't worry, this is the last time you'll get to say anything about me." Nathan didn't stop me. No one did. As Claire and I walked toward the door, Joanne said loudly behind us, "You'll regret this, Juanita." I turned once, just briefly. No. I regret staying as long as I did. Outside, the air was cool and sweet. Claire squeezed my arm and whispered, "You just burned the stage they mocked you on." I exhaled. And it felt like the first breath I'd taken in years. The night after the Olive Garden confrontation, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, but from the strange quiet that had taken over my body. For the first time in years, my heart wasn't racing from trying to please someone. There was no performance to prepare for, no armor to wear. Just silence. Sweet, final silence. Nathan tried to call. 10 times. I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up at Claire's to over 50 notifications again. This time, they weren't just from Nathan. Joanne had texted a furious paragraph about how I'd disgraced the family in public and made Nathan look weak. Madison had posted a vague status on Facebook. Some people just love playing the victim. Let them go. They'll whine somewhere else. She didn't tag me. She didn't have to. Then came a message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. Juanita, it's Uncle Rob. I'm sorry for what happened. You didn't deserve that. I always thought you were better than the rest of us, but I kept my mouth shut. Maybe I shouldn't have. It stunned me. I stared at the screen. One message. Just one. But it gave me breath. Claire walked in with fresh coffee, peering at me. Good news? Just unexpected. I smiled weakly and set the phone down. Then I turned to her. I need to go back to the house. Claire blinked. Are you sure? You really want to see him again? I don't want to see him, I said. But I need to pack my things. I want out. For real. Before he starts trying to spin this into a love story gone wrong. So that afternoon, Claire and I drove to the house Nathan and I once shared. It was a small 2-story rental, surrounded by trimmed hedges and an annoying wind chime his mother had given us, still clinking in the breeze. I unlocked the front door and was hit by the scent of pine cleaner and stale silence. Everything looked the same. And yet, everything felt different. I walked past the couch we picked out during our second year of marriage, the one we argued over. He wanted leather, I wanted soft velvet. We compromised. But looking at it now, all I could see was how often I'd sat there alone, waiting for him to come home from family events he insisted I skip for my own good. I packed fast. My books, my journals, my grandmother's ceramic mixing bowls. I took the throw blanket I loved but he'd called Grandma chic. I left behind the things that meant nothing, the engagement photo on the hallway wall, the wine glasses his mom bought us so you'll learn what good taste is. As I was taping up the third box, the front door creaked open. Nathan stepped in, wearing the same hoodie he wore the day we moved in together. He looked tired. His eyes were red, and he hadn't shaved. For a moment, I almost felt something. But then he spoke. You're really going through with this? I didn't answer. He stepped closer. Juanita, come on. You're mad, I get it. But you can't just throw everything away over a few jokes. I froze. There it was again. A few jokes. No, I said, standing straight. I'm walking away because for 3 years I was nothing but a punching bag with a smile. And you let it happen. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. I didn't mean to. That's the problem, Nathan, I interrupted. You never meant to. You never meant to protect me. Never meant to listen. Never meant to choose me. And I kept waiting for a moment that was never coming. He looked at me, lips parted, like he was searching for words that wouldn't sound stupid. He failed. Can't we talk about this? Really talk? Just us? I reached for the final box. We could have talked before. All those nights I asked you to listen. All those times I cried in the car after your family mocked me and you said, you're being dramatic. You had your chances. He moved toward me, his voice quiet. I still love you. I paused. Not because I believed him. But because I finally understood, he probably did love me, in the small, selfish way some people love what makes them look good. He loved how I looked on his arm. He loved the image of having a cultured wife. He loved the convenience. But he never loved me enough to protect me. I turned to him, my voice low but unwavering. If that's your version of love, Nathan, I hope the next woman you give it to is stronger than I was. Claire appeared in the doorway, having waited in the car until she sensed things might turn. You good? She asked, eyeing Nathan. I nodded. Nathan stared at her, as if confused why she was even there. Claire didn't blink. She's not alone anymore. Get used to that. I closed the last box and walked out of the house without saying another word. As the door shut behind me, it felt like the last breath of a story I'd outgrown. Nathan didn't follow. He didn't beg again. Maybe he knew it was really over. Maybe he finally saw what I had become, someone who no longer needed to be chosen. I moved back into my parents' house that same evening. My mother met me at the door with open arms, pulling me into a hug that nearly crushed the breath out of me. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't ask for the details. She just held me. My father stood behind her, his expression more tender than I'd ever seen it. He took the box from my arms without a word and carried it inside. That simple act felt more like love than anything Nathan had done in years. That night, I sat at the dinner table between them like I had so many years ago, eating arroz con pollo and sipping warm tea. For the first time in so long, I wasn't bracing myself for a snide remark or waiting for someone to laugh at my expense. No one was watching to see if I'd react the wrong way. No one was ready to pounce on a slip of the tongue. It was just peace. And silence. And the soft clatter of spoons against ceramic. "I'm proud of you," my father said softly, halfway through the meal. My hand froze over my plate. I looked at him, surprised. My dad had always been a man of few words. Reserved, calm, stoic. "I saw the look in your eyes the night you left for that dinner," he continued. "I knew you were walking into a storm. But you came out of it standing tall." Tears threatened, but I swallowed them down. I wasn't going to cry anymore, not out of pain, not from humiliation. I was done with that chapter. I wasn't going to be the woman they thought I was. I wasn't going to be their ghost story or cautionary tale. I was going to be the lesson they never saw coming. The next morning, I opened my laptop and began searching for a new apartment. Claire sent me listings like clockwork, little places with sunlit kitchens and big windows, cozy third-floor walk-ups, studios near the park. And each time she sent one, she included a tiny note. "I can already see your plants on the windowsill here. This one has space for a reading nook. You need a reading nook. Start over in this one, sky. Paint it whatever color you want." I settled on a one-bedroom place just off Maple Street. It wasn't fancy, but it had light, charm, and enough space for me and my peace. I signed the lease by the end of the week and started moving in 2 weeks later. During that time, I began to shed the old skin that had held me together during those long, toxic years. I deleted the family group chat. Blocked Nathan's number. And when Madison posted another jab online, this time a meme of a trash can with a tiara on it captioned "Guess who?" I didn't even react. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't in their world anymore. But that didn't stop them from trying to pull me back in. Joanne texted. "Juanita, I think it's time you consider how Nathan's feeling. He's been miserable since you left. He made a mistake. But do you really want to throw everything away over some hurt feelings?" I didn't respond. The next day, Nathan sent flowers to my new apartment. Peonies. My favorite. But he never remembered that. Claire had probably told him once, and now he was using it to look thoughtful. The note read, "Still love you. Please come home. N." I dropped the bouquet into the trash and washed my hands. A week later, I got the divorce papers back. Signed. No note. No comment. Just a signature, barely legible, at the bottom of the page. I stared at it for a moment. Not out of sadness, but disbelief that it was finally over. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. No more pretending. I was free. To celebrate, my mom made my favorite dinner, and Claire brought over a cake. On it, she'd scrawled in messy icing, "Welcome to freedom, Juanita." We laughed so hard we nearly dropped the thing. As we ate, my younger sister, Lena, clinked her glass and raised a toast. To the woman who walked out of a cage with grace. "You're the blueprint now." Everyone laughed, but I felt something stir deep inside. Not ego. Not pride. Just wholeness. The kind you only feel after surviving something that nearly erased you. Moving into the new apartment was like breathing for the first time after holding it in for years. It wasn't large, and it definitely wasn't fancy. The walls were plain white, the hardwood floors creaked a little when I walked, and the kitchen window faced a quiet alley, but to me, it was perfect. It was mine. Claire helped me carry the boxes up all 3 flights of stairs, sweating and swearing the whole time, but smiling wide every time she glanced at me. "You look different," she said, brushing hair from her forehead. "Lighter. Like you're finally in your own skin again." I didn't answer right away. I looked around the empty space, still smelling faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner, and whispered, "It's the first place I've ever lived that doesn't carry their voices in the walls." She paused, her face softening. "Then let's fill it with your voice." That night, I slept with the windows cracked open. A gentle spring breeze drifted in, and I fell asleep to the sound of distant cars, wind chimes from a neighbor's porch, and the occasional bark of a dog. Peace wasn't always silence, it was choosing what noises filled your world. In the mornings, I made tea in my chipped blue mug, the one Madison once called cheap dorm crap. I read books on the couch with my feet tucked beneath me. I bought fresh lavender and set the pot on the windowsill, watching it sway in the sun. Each tiny act of living felt like rebellion. At work, I flourished. I no longer had to rush home to make dinner for someone who'd critique it with a smirk. I no longer had to worry about arriving to family events with the wrong dessert, or leaving with the wrong expression on my face. I stayed late at the office if I wanted. I pitched bolder ideas. I got promoted within 3 weeks of returning. It was like my confidence had been waiting in a locked drawer this whole time, and now that I had the key, I wasn't going to lose it again. Still, the messages kept coming. Not from Nathan directly, but through others. A cousin of his, someone I barely remembered, sent a Facebook message that read, "Nathan's not himself. He doesn't eat. He barely talks. He made mistakes, sure, but don't you think you're being a little cold?" I stared at it for a long time. Not because it moved me, but because it confirmed something I hadn't dared to say out loud. They weren't sad I'd been hurt. They were sad I was gone. Because I had been their emotional punching bag. Their scapegoat. The one who absorbed tension so they didn't have to face their own problems. And now? Now they had to turn on each other. I didn't respond to the cousin. I didn't need to. Let them sit in the mess they made. Then came the real twist. 3 weeks after I moved out, I got a phone call at work. It was from Emily, the cousin whose baby shower had been the final straw. Her voice was quiet, shaking slightly. "Juanita, I just had to call. I don't know if you'll even want to hear from me." I leaned back in my chair. "Emily?" "Yeah," she whispered. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I saw everything that happened that day. I should have said something. I wanted to. But I didn't. And I've been thinking about it ever since." I was quiet for a long moment. Emily continued, "I just had my baby. A girl. And when I held her, I thought, what if she grows up and someone treats her like that? And no one stands up for her?" I couldn't sleep for nights thinking about it. My chest ached, not from pain, but from the weight of the truth in her words. "I'm sorry I didn't speak then," she said. "But I'm speaking now. And I just want you to know, you weren't crazy. Or dramatic. Or wrong." Tears finally welled in my eyes. I hadn't cried in weeks. But this was different. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means more than you know. Just take care of yourself, okay?" Emily said, and then quietly hung up. I sat there at my desk, eyes glassy, heart pounding. For all the times I'd been told I was too sensitive, too thin-skinned, too much, here was proof I hadn't imagined it. Someone else had seen it. And she was brave enough to say it out loud. That night, I lit a candle in my new apartment and played the piano for the first time in months. The small keyboard had been gathering dust in the corner, but I pulled it out, set it near the window, and let my fingers find the chords I hadn't touched since before the wedding. Music flowed out of me. Quiet, aching, beautiful. No one was there to interrupt. No one to joke or roll their eyes or compare it to a cat stepping on keys. Just me, and the melody of a woman finally reclaiming her space. That was the night I realized, healing wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was as simple as a soft note in a quiet room. 2 months after I moved into my apartment, I received an official email from the county court. Subject: Final divorce decree, case closed. I sat still in my chair, rereading the words again and again. Not because I didn't understand them, but because they felt unreal. For 3 years, I had signed my name next to his. Paid bills as a team. Shared a bed with someone who let me bleed in silence. And now, legally, finally, I wasn't his anymore. I wasn't anyone's shadow. I leaned back, took a deep breath, and stared at the ceiling as a strange sensation filled my chest. Relief. Not the angry kind that comes with slammed doors or shouted goodbyes. This was quiet. Whole. Like I had finally stepped off a stage I never wanted to be on. That night, my parents invited me over for dinner. It was just the 3 of us again, like it had been before Nathan. My mother made arroz con leche and my father grilled corn in the backyard like he used to when I was little. After we ate, my mom brought out a surprise. A cake, store-bought, lopsided, with icing smeared in too many directions. On it were clumsy red letters that read, "You did it, Juanita." I laughed. For real this time. "I hope you know," my mother said, placing her hand over mine, "you didn't just walk out of that family. You walked back into your own life." I looked over at my father. He gave a single nod and raised his glass. "To peace," he said. We toasted. And in that moment, I realized something else, something bigger. I wasn't just healing. I was becoming someone new. Someone that Nathan, Madison, Joanne, none of them ever really knew. Maybe I had been quiet, polite, soft-spoken. But that wasn't weakness. That was survival. And now I didn't have to survive anyone. A few days later, Claire convinced me to attend a networking event for local designers. She said it would be good for me to reconnect with people, talk about projects, ideas, passions. The things that used to make my eyes light up before I dimmed them for the sake of keeping the peace in someone else's world. At the event, I wore a deep burgundy blouse and a blazer Madison once mocked, saying it made me look like a wannabe CEO. Now, I wore it with pride. As I mingled, I met a woman named Teresa who ran a boutique hotel and wanted to redo all 5 of their guest rooms. We hit it off instantly. "We want the rooms to feel like an escape," she said, sipping her wine. "Somewhere people can come and exhale." I smiled. That's exactly what I've been trying to build lately. We exchanged business cards. 2 weeks later, she hired me. Not just as a freelancer, but as the lead on the entire project. It was the biggest opportunity I'd ever received. The contract totaled more than anything I'd made in a year with my old firm. And best of all? It was mine. Completely mine. One afternoon, while walking back from the paint store, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I paused, opened it, and read. "Saw your name in the local magazine. Congrats on the hotel project. Guess leaving us was the best thing you ever did. Madison." I stared at the message. For a brief second, I felt the old reflex, the part of me that wanted to reply, to defend, to explain. But I didn't. I simply blocked the number. Not out of anger. But because it no longer mattered. They didn't matter. I mattered. That night, I walked through the empty hotel rooms for the first time as the lead designer, clipboard in hand. The hallway was quiet. Just me and the hum of the overhead lights. I ran my fingers along the wall, imagining what I'd do with the space. Warm colors. Open light. Spaces that felt like home. And I smiled. Because even though Nathan's family had tried to make me feel small, I was now rebuilding spaces of my own. Spaces that reflected peace, not pretense. Rooms that welcomed people instead of ridiculing them. Rooms that held stories, but never at someone else's expense. One bright Sunday morning, I opened my window to let in the crisp Oregon breeze and caught a glimpse of the lavender plant dancing in the sunlight. It had grown fuller since the day I bought it. Some leaves curled with grace, and the small purple blooms were beginning to show themselves again. I took a breath and whispered without even thinking. I'm proud of you. And I meant it, not to the plant. To myself. It had been nearly 4 months since the baby shower. 4 months since I walked away from a family that cheered while I drowned. 4 months since I looked into the eyes of a man who once claimed to love me and realized I had loved him more than he was ever capable of loving anyone, including himself. The world hadn't changed. But I had. One afternoon, while working on the hotel redesign, Teresa pulled me aside. You know, she said, your energy is different. Like you've been through a fire but came out shinier. That's rare. I smiled. I think I just finally stopped shrinking. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights low and a cup of tea warming my hands. I looked around the space I had built for myself, the throw blanket Madison once mocked now draped proudly across my couch. The painting Nathan once said didn't match the vibe hanging beautifully above the bookshelf. The tiny photos of my parents, Claire and Lena pinned near my desk. And right there in the corner, my keyboard. I walked over and touched the keys. Then slowly began to play. It wasn't a song anyone would recognize. It was one I made up as I went, something soft, unpolished, but real. The kind of music that comes only when the silence isn't threatening anymore, but sacred. Halfway through, I stopped and laughed to myself. Not because something was funny, but because this was my life now. And it was enough. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Nathan's. I sat on the balcony, opened it, and began to read. Juanita. I don't know where to begin. Maybe by saying I'm sorry, though I know it's probably too late for that. I've spent the last few months trying to figure out how I let it all fall apart. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that you were overreacting, that my family was just joking, but the truth is, I was afraid to stand up to them. Afraid to not belong. So I let them tear you down, thinking if I laughed with them, it wouldn't hurt as much. But now I see, I was never protecting you. I was protecting my comfort. And I lost you for it. And that's a regret I'll carry for the rest of my life. If you never reply, I understand. But I hope you're happy now. I hope you found people who see you, really see you, the way I never did. Nathan. I folded the letter slowly and set it on the table beside my tea. Then I looked up at the blue sky and whispered. I did. And I had. I didn't write him back. Not because I hated him, but because I had nothing left to say. Forgiveness, I'd learned, didn't always mean letting someone back into your life. Sometimes, it just meant letting yourself walk forward without dragging their shadow behind you. 3 months later, the hotel project was completed. Teresa held a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and she insisted I stand beside her. There were photographers, journalists, and even a local design magazine that did a spread about the transformation. In the article, beneath my photo, they quoted me as saying, "Design isn't just about spaces. It's about giving people places where they feel safe to be themselves. Where they don't have to perform to be loved." When I read those words in print, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Pride. Not for the project. For surviving. For growing. for refusing to become the bitter woman they tried to turn me into. Now, I walk through life at my own pace. I say no when I want. I laugh when I mean it. I love myself out loud. And I never again apologize for feeling deeply, for protecting my peace, for walking away from people who only wanted me around when I stayed small. And if there's one thing I want you to remember from my story, it's this. Never let someone convince you that love requires your silence. That family means enduring humiliation. That kindness means shrinking. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you'll ever do is stand up quietly, walk away, and never look back. Juanita's journey is proof that strength isn't always loud, it's in the quiet, steady steps we take toward reclaiming our dignity. Sometimes, choosing peace over performance is the most radical act of self-love. What did you think of Juanita's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.